After a grueling 16-hour shift saving lives, a nurse was left stranded and freezing. The rain soaked right through her thin scrubs, and every bone in her body ached with a weariness so deep it felt like it had settled in for good. She thought her night couldn't get any worse as she watched the last bus, the 11:47, pull away without her. She had no idea that a man in a passing luxury car, a complete stranger, was about to change her life forever. She thought her story was ending on that cold, empty street corner, but it was really just beginning. The nurse's name was Grace. Right then, her entire world was just a patch of wet concrete under the sickly orange flicker of a street lamp. 16 hours, a double shift at City General, a hospital that had become a blur of understaffed floors and overcrowded wards. She'd poured every last ounce of herself into a patient's, holding hands, giving meds, and whispering words of comfort. Now, there was no one left to comfort her. Her phone was just a dead black rectangle in her hand, the battery having given up hours ago. Her apartment felt like it was on another planet. She'd texted her roommate earlier, but got no response, and a cab just wasn't an option. The $40 it would cost was the difference between making rent or getting an eviction notice. Recent overtime cuts had squeezed her budget until it screamed, leaving her bank account a wasteland. So she just stood there, shivering from the cold, but also from a quiet, creeping despair. The city, usually buzzing with life, was dead silent, its familiar streets suddenly feeling menacing. Each drop of rain felt like a tiny hammer chipping away at her will to keep going. That's when a new sound cut through the rain, a low, powerful hum. A pair of headlights sliced through the dark, slowing down as they approached her lonely spot. A sleek black car, the kind you only see in movies, pulled up silently to the curb. It was so out of place in this part of town that Grace's first instinct was pure fear. Her exhausted heart started pounding against her ribs. She took a step back, clutching her worn-out bag like a shield. The tinted rear window glided down, revealing a man inside. He wasn't what she expected. He was sharp, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, his face etched with a look of calm concern. He looked right at her, his gaze steady and almost unnervingly perceptive. "You look like you're in trouble," he said, his calm voice cutting easily through the sound of the storm. It wasn't a question. Grace hesitated, her mind racing. Every warning she'd ever heard about strange men on dark nights was screaming at her. "I'm fine," she lied, but her trembling voice gave her away. He didn't look away. A small, unconvinced smile touched his lips. "It's pouring, it's almost midnight, and the last bus is gone. You don't look fine. You look like you've had the worst day of your life." She was right, and just hearing someone say it made her want to cry. My phone's dead. I'll figure it out," she stammered, trying to sound more confident than she felt. "Get in," he said, his tone shifting from observation to instruction. It wasn't aggressive, but it held an authority you just didn't argue with. "I'll give you a ride." Grace's mind was a war between suspicion and sheer desperation. Getting into a stranger's car was a terrible idea. Then again, staying out here, soaked and freezing, felt just as dangerous. She looked at his face one more time. There was no threat in his eyes, just intensity. He seemed more interested than menacing. After a long moment, the bone-chilling cold made the decision for her. With a deep, shuddering breath, she walked to the car, pulled the heavy door open, and slid into the plush leather interior. Instantly, the miserable, rainy world outside was muted. The inside of the car was a different universe. It smelled like rich leather and expensive cologne, and it was warm and impossibly quiet. As the car glided away from the curb, Grace felt a strange wave of disbelief. Minutes ago, she was cold and alone. Now she was wrapped in luxury, being driven by a man who looked like he owned half the city. He didn't speak at first, just drove, giving her a moment to collect herself. Grace watched out the window as the gritty streets of her neighborhood turned into the clean, wide avenues of the city's wealthier side. "You're a nurse," he finally said. Stilly General, right? Grace turned, surprised. Yes. How did you know? The logo on your sleeve, he answered simply. He paused, then added, Sterling Medical knows the hospital well. The name just hung there in the air. Sterling Medical. Of course, Grace knew it. Everyone in healthcare did. They were a multi-billion-dollar corporation that owned private hospitals, research labs, and, most importantly, the company that had recently bought out City General's main supplier. They were giants, a world away from the daily grind of her life. I see, was all she could say. It must be a tough job, he continued, glancing over at her, especially now. Something about his tone unlocked the floodgates. All the exhaustion, the frustration, the feeling of being completely invisible, it all came pouring out. Tough doesn't even begin to cover it, she said, the words tumbling out. It's impossible. We're running on fumes. We don't have enough staff, we don't have enough supplies, and every single day they ask us to do more with less. I just spent 16 hours on my feet for what? To barely make rent? To end up stranded because I can't afford a cab? I love my patients, I really do, but I feel like I'm drowning. She stopped, suddenly embarrassed. She just unloaded her life's problems onto a total stranger. I'm sorry, she whispered, looking down. You didn't need to hear all that. He was quiet for a moment. Grace braced for a polite, dismissive comment. Instead, he said, Don't apologize. Thank you for telling me. He sounded like he meant it. People like you are the heart of the entire system. Without you, none of it. The buildings, the tech, the profits, it's all meaningless. His words hit a nerve deep inside her. He saw her. He actually saw her in a way she hadn't felt seen in years. That's when she realized they weren't heading toward her apartment. They'd passed her turnoff 10 minutes ago and were now entering the city's most exclusive district. A fresh wave of panic started to creep in. Where are we going? Her voice was tight. This isn't the way to my place. The man kept his eyes on the road as he turned into the private entrance of a towering skyscraper. I'm not taking you to your apartment, he said, his tone still maddeningly calm. The fear rushed back, cold and sharp. What? You have to take me home. Stop the car. The car glided to a halt in a brightly lit underground garage. He turned off the engine and finally faced her. The concern in his eyes was gone, replaced by that same intense look from the bus stop. No, he said, leaving no room for argument. Tonight, you're not going back there. You're coming with me. The words, "You're coming with me," hung in the silent garage, feeling like a weird mix of a command and a promise. This was it, the moment the fairy tale turned into a horror story. But before she could scream, he spoke again, his voice softening just enough to stop her panic. You're soaked, you're exhausted, and you shouldn't be alone right now, he stated, like it was an obvious fact. You need a hot shower, dry clothes, and a safe place to rest. Your apartment can wait. Please, just trust me. He got out, walked around, and opened her door, holding out a hand. Watching him carefully, she hesitantly took it. His grip was firm and warm. He led her to a private elevator that opened with a single, unmarked button. The ride up was silent and so fast her stomach fluttered. The doors opened directly into a breathtaking penthouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed off a glittering, panoramic view of the entire city. The space was minimalist but screamed luxury. Grace just stood there, dripping onto the perfect marble floor. She'd never seen anything like this in her life. Make yourself at home, he said, already walking toward another room. Guest suite is through that door. You'll find everything you need. Take a shower. I'll get some coffee ready. Overwhelmed, Grace did what he said. The guest suite was bigger than her whole apartment. In the bathroom, she found clean clothes, a simple t-shirt and sweatpants laid out on the bed. They were way too big, but they were warm and dry. The hot shower washed away the cold and the grime, but it couldn't wash away the feeling that none of this was real. When she came out, feeling a little more human, he was waiting with 2 mugs of coffee. "Feeling better?" he asked. "Warmer," I admitted, clutching the mug, "but I'm completely lost. Who are you? Why am I here?" He took a sip of his coffee. "My name is Julian. As for why you're here, I did something you're probably not going to like. I called your supervisor." Grace's jaw dropped. "You what? You can't do that. Who do you think you are?" The anger finally broke through her exhaustion. "I told her you had a family emergency and wouldn't be in for your next few shifts," he said, completely unfazed. "You're running on empty, Grace. You need a break before you completely burn out." "You had no right," she shot back, setting her mug down with a clatter. "You don't know me." "You're right. I overstepped," he admitted, "but I had a good reason." He picked up a tablet and turned the screen to her. "This is why you're here. This is why you couldn't go home tonight." On the screen was a live security feed pointed at her apartment building. As she watched, a man in a dark hoodie stepped out of the shadows. He just lingered, staring up at her windows. He paced, checked his phone, then walked right up to her building's front door and tried the handle. He stood there for several long minutes before melting back into the darkness. The blood drained from Grace's face. "Who is that?" she whispered. "I don't know," Julian said, his voice now grim. "I had my security team check the area as soon as you told me where you lived. It was just a precaution. That man has been there for the last 3 nights, always showing up right around the time your shift ends." Grace sank onto the couch, her legs suddenly giving out. She'd felt like someone was watching her a few times late at night, but had always brushed it off as paranoia. Seeing the proof was terrifying. The world tilted. The man at the bus stop, the fancy car, this penthouse, it all clicked into place. This wasn't a kidnapping. It was a rescue, a strange, unsettling rescue. Julian sat down, giving her space. "I couldn't take you there, Grace, not until we know who that is and what he wants. You're safe here." He looked at her, all the authority gone, his expression now full of genuine concern. "I know this is all completely insane, but you're safe now." Silence filled the penthouse. Grace stared at the tablet, then at Julian. Her anger was gone, replaced by a storm of fear, relief, and confusion. This stranger had been arrogant and overbearing, and he'd just saved her life. "How?" she finally whispered. "How did you do all of this? The security footage, calling my work." Julian paused. "I have resources," he said simply. That name he'd mentioned earlier clicked. Sterling Medical. A man with these resources wasn't just an employee. "You're the CEO, aren't you? Julian Sterling?" He gave a slight nod. "My name is Julian Vance. My family started Sterling Medical." The room spun. She was in the home of one of the most powerful men in her industry, a man whose corporate decisions probably contributed to the very problems she'd just been crying about. A hysterical laugh bubbled up in her throat. "So the man who runs the whole machine just picks a broken cog off the street?" His face fell. "I know how it looks, but when I saw you tonight, I didn't see a cog. I saw a person giving everything she had and getting nothing back. I saw someone who deserved better." His sincerity was disarming. As crazy as everything was, she believed him. He wasn't looking at her with pity, but with respect. For the first time all night, the panic in her chest began to fade, replaced by a strange, fluttering feeling. He was handsome, she'd noticed that already, but now his intense gaze felt magnetic. "So what now?" she asked, feeling more vulnerable than ever. "I just stay here?" "For now," he said. "My security team is on it. In the meantime, you're my guest. Please, let me handle this." He looked at her, a different kind of question in his eyes. "And after you've rested, I'd like to take you to dinner. A real one, not as a CEO and a nurse, just as Julian and Grace." The offer was absurd. Her life was in chaos. There was a stalker out there, and a billionaire was asking her on a date. And yet, she couldn't say no. In that moment, saying yes felt like the only sane thing to do. With a small, hesitant nod, she agreed. That night changed everything. In the days that followed, Julian's team identified the stalker, a disgruntled former patient, and made sure she was safe. But Julian didn't stop there. He didn't just give her a safe place to land, he gave her a voice. After listening to her stories from City General, he launched a new foundation within Sterling Medical dedicated to supporting frontline nurses with housing grants, mental health resources, and funding to fight for better working conditions. He asked Grace to lead it. She was no longer just trying to stay afloat. She became a force for change, using her experience to help thousands of others like her. She eventually moved into a beautiful home of her own, her money worries a matter of the past. That ride home from the bus stop had become a journey to a completely new life, and her relationship with Julian blossomed into something real, built on respect and a shared goal of making a difference. Their story is a powerful reminder that heroes are everywhere. They're the nurses, teachers, and caregivers who pour their hearts into their work, often for little thanks. And it shows that a single act of kindness, of truly seeing someone in their moment of need, doesn't just have the power to turn a bad night around, it can change a life forever. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe for more stories that restore your faith in humanity. What would you have done in Grace's or Julian's position? Let us know in the comments below.